Only 10% of American homes are truly safe for people over 60. I didn't believe that statistic until I nearly tripped over a rug I'd walked across for decades. That moment scared me, not because of the fall, but because I realized how much I'd been pretending everything was fine. My home was supposed to protect me, yet it quietly turned into a maze of tiny hazards and unspoken stress. I used to feel like this house was my kingdom. Every photo, every shelf told my story. But somewhere along the way, it stopped serving me and started controlling me. The endless repairs, the heavy doors, the guilt of I'll fix it later. I wasn't living in my home anymore. I was tiptoeing around it. So before we dive in, if your home ever feels more exhausting than comforting, hit that hype button right now. You get 3 a week, and one simple tap helps this message reach someone else who's quietly struggling just like I was. My name is Thessaly Brandt, I'm 67 years old, and I've lived in this little 3-bedroom house in Cincinnati for 34 years. It's where I raised 3 children, hosted birthday parties that spilled into the yard, and slow danced in the kitchen with my husband on quiet Sunday nights. Every wall carries fingerprints of the life we built together. The pencil marks on the pantry door where the kids grew taller, the chipped tile by the sink that we always promised to replace, the photo frames that still hold faces frozen in better years. But something shifted after I turned 60. My body slowed down, but my home didn't. The stairs seemed steeper. The hallways felt longer. The clutter started whispering that I was falling behind. I caught myself skipping rooms, telling visitors, "Oh, don't go in there, it's a mess," when really, I couldn't face what those spaces reminded me of. My husband's old study became a storage pile. The dining room sat untouched, waiting for a family gathering that never came. The silence in those rooms grew so thick, it almost felt alive. One morning, I poured my coffee and stood by the kitchen window, the same window I'd stared through for decades, and I felt this deep ache, like I didn't belong in my own home anymore. It wasn't just the maintenance or the mess. It was the quiet reminder that time had changed everything, and I hadn't caught up. That day, I whispered to myself, I can't keep living like this. I need my home to feel like mine again. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to start over. I wanted to reclaim what I already had, to breathe new life into a place that had always held me, even when I stopped holding it back. So I made a decision. I would stop surviving inside these walls and start truly living in them again. And little by little, through 10 small but powerful changes, I did just that. Here's how I took back my home and my peace. 1. I stopped calling it my forever home and started calling it my right now home. For most of my life, I called this place my forever home. It sounded comforting, like a promise that I'd never have to change a thing. But as the years passed, that word forever started to feel like a weight tied to my ankles. I realized I was clinging to a version of my home that belonged to someone else, a younger woman with boundless energy, a house full of kids, and a husband who could fix anything. That woman isn't here anymore. I am. And I deserve a home that fits me now, not the ghost of who I used to be. The moment it clicked was so small, it almost felt silly. I was standing in the hallway, staring at the same beige walls we'd painted in the early 90s. I remember thinking, why am I still living inside someone else's color palette? So I grabbed a sticky note and wrote, "This home serves 2025 me, not 1991 me." I stuck it right on the refrigerator where I'd see it every morning. That one sentence became my permission slip to start changing things. I repainted the living room a soft sage green that calms me. I moved my favorite armchair next to the window for better light. I donated boxes of things that had been collecting dust for decades, the baby high chair, the china set nobody uses, the heavy curtains that blocked the sunshine I now crave. For years, I thought keeping everything the same honored my past. But what it really did was keep me stuck in it. When I stopped calling it my forever home and started calling it my right now home, I finally understood something beautiful. Homes aren't supposed to stay frozen in time, they're supposed to grow and evolve right alongside us. That mindset shift lifted a kind of emotional fog I didn't even know I was living under. My home started feeling lighter. I started feeling lighter. Has the word forever been holding you hostage too? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear how you're learning to make peace with change. And just wait until you hear what I did with my dining room. My kids still can't believe it. 2. I turned my formal dining room into a command center and stopped apologizing for it. For decades, my formal dining room sat there like a photograph, perfect, untouched, and painfully quiet. The table was always polished, the chairs always aligned, and the china cabinet stood like a museum exhibit behind glass. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also lifeless. The truth. That room saw more dust than laughter. It existed for the version of me who hosted Thanksgiving dinners for 12 and set out cloth napkins folded into swans. That woman doesn't live here anymore. And yet, every time I walked past that room, I felt a twinge of guilt, like I was disappointing some invisible standard of what a proper home should look like. Then one morning, while sorting through bills at the kitchen counter, it hit me. I had an entire room sitting empty while my everyday life spilled into cluttered corners. Why was I keeping a room for guests who visit once a year instead of for the woman who lives here every day? That question changed everything. Within a week, the dining room was reborn. I cleared the table of crystal and replaced it with a sturdy organizer. I brought in a small lamp, my favorite pens, and labeled bins for mail, prescriptions, and receipts. My sewing machine found a permanent home there, along with my tablet and chargers. I added a soft rug under my feet and a bulletin board above the sideboard for reminders and family photos. Now, that formal room is where my real life happens. It's where I balance my checkbook, sort medication, write birthday cards, and plan my week. It's the heartbeat of my home, messy, personal, useful, and full of life again. And I stopped apologizing for it. We've been conditioned to treat certain spaces as sacred, reserved for guests, for appearances, for someday. But someday rarely comes. A home that looks perfect but doesn't serve you isn't a sanctuary, it's a stage. So tell me, what room in your house looks lovely but doesn't love you back? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And the next change I made. It's something almost no one talks about, but it changed the way I feel in my home more than anything else. 3. I hired a tech translator, not a handyman. For the longest time, I thought my problem was mechanical, light bulbs burning out, remotes that wouldn't sync, thermostats that made no sense. So I kept calling handymen, assuming a screwdriver could fix what was really a communication problem between me and my home. What I truly needed wasn't a repair, it was translation. That's when I met Eli, a 23-year-old tech consultant my neighbor's granddaughter recommended. I called him expecting quick fixes. What I got was a 2-hour transformation that changed the way I live. He didn't bring a toolbox, he brought patience, curiosity, and a way of explaining technology that made sense. We started simple. He connected my phone to my smart TV, programmed my thermostat to adjust itself, and set up voice commands so I wouldn't have to wrestle with tiny buttons anymore. When I said, "Alexa, I'm going to bed," the lights dimmed, the doors locked, and the temperature adjusted like magic. I stood there grinning, realizing it wasn't magic at all, it was modern independence. Then came the motion sensor lights. No more fumbling for switches in the dark or worrying about tripping on the way to the bathroom. My favorite addition, though, was the video doorbell. For the first time, I could see every visitor from my tablet, whether it was the mail carrier, my daughter, or a stranger. That small sense of control brought me more peace than I expected. Eli called what he did tech translation, and I think that's exactly right. He bridged the gap between my comfort zone and the world that's constantly updating around me. It wasn't about gadgets, it was about freedom, safety, and confidence. In just one afternoon, my home shifted from stressful to seamless. I no longer felt like a guest in my own space, fumbling through blinking lights and confusing settings. I felt empowered. And what I did next? It wasn't about devices or downloads, it was about something far deeper, people. 4. I created microsocial zones in my home. Loneliness has a sneaky way of settling in quietly. It doesn't always come with tears or silence, it comes with routines. The same chair. The same mug. The same shows. For a while, I told myself I was fine. I had memories, calls from my kids, and the company of my own thoughts. But the truth. The house had grown too quiet, and I had grown too used to it. One day, as I watered the flowers on my front porch, I realized something. The space that used to welcome guests had turned into a decorative ghost. Pretty, but unused. So I decided to design against loneliness. If my house could be rearranged for safety, why not for connection too? I started small. I added 2 comfortable chairs, a little bistro table, and a plant stand to the porch. I called it my coffee corner. Then, I made a rule: if someone passed by and waved, I'd wave back and offer them a seat. Within a week, my neighbor Carla stopped by for a quick chat. By the end of the month, 2 others joined. Now, a few times a week, my porch fills with laughter, coffee cups, and stories that make the mornings lighter. Inside, I created a puzzle table by the window. It seemed silly at first, but it became the easiest conversation starter. Friends who visit always end up sitting there, helping me find that one impossible corner piece. It's something simple, but it gives my home a heartbeat again. Then I took it a step further. I joined an online book club for older adults that meets twice a month. I log in from my kitchen table, coffee in hand, surrounded by people I've never met in person but who now feel like old friends. We talk about characters, endings, and sometimes life itself. The walls that once echoed now hum with connection. You see, loneliness doesn't disappear with noise, it fades with presence. So I started designing presence into my home. 1 chair, 1 table, 1 conversation at a time. Have you ever felt lonely in your own home? You're not alone. Share your story below. And the next change I made. It was about turning safety into something surprisingly beautiful. 5. I embraced stealth accessibility, and my home looks better than ever. For the longest time, I thought making my home safer meant surrendering beauty. Every time I saw those clunky grab bars or clinical-looking ramps online, I felt a quiet dread. I didn't want to live in a house that looked like a hospital. I wanted grace, not reminders of fragility. But then I discovered something that changed the way I see design entirely. Accessibility can be stealthy, so seamlessly built into beauty that no one even notices it's there. It started with the handrails. I found a local craftsman who made them out of brushed bronze, with a curved, sculptural design that looked more like artwork than safety equipment. They caught the light beautifully, wrapping along my hallway like a quiet promise. Then I repainted my door frames in subtle, contrasting tones, warm cream against muted sage. It wasn't just aesthetic, it made depth and distance easier to see. My friends thought I'd redecorated. In truth, I'd redesigned for longevity. Next came the furniture. I replaced sharp-edged coffee tables with ones that had rounded corners and smooth surfaces. I swapped out rugs that liked to curl at the edges for ones with non-slip backings and softer patterns. Even the lighting changed. Tiny motion sensor floor lights that glow softly at night, guiding me from the bedroom to the bathroom without a single harsh glare. They double as ambience, and sometimes I leave them on just because they make the house feel calm. Every change served 2 purposes. It protected me while preserving beauty. No bulky equipment, no clinical white rails, just thoughtful details that whispered you belong here. For the first time in years, I felt both safe and stylish in my own home. Aging friendly doesn't have to mean obvious. It can mean clever, elegant, and empowering. It's design that honors both your independence and your dignity. And after I transformed the way my home looked and felt, I turned my attention to something even more daunting: the financial decision that completely changed how I live. 6. I stopped maintaining perfection and started budgeting for maintenance relief. For years, I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor. Every mowed lawn, scrubbed floor, and repaired hinge whispered, "You can still do it all, Thessaly." I thought slowing down meant giving up. But somewhere between the endless "I'll get to it tomorrow" and the backache that lingered all week, I realized I wasn't maintaining my home anymore. I was maintaining an illusion of control. And that illusion was costing me my peace. The turning point came on a humid July afternoon. I was outside, pushing the mower, sweat running into my eyes, when my neighbor's teenage son called out, "Mrs. Brandt, why don't you just hire someone?" My first instinct was pride. But later that night, as I rubbed my sore knees, I realized I wasn't saving money. I was spending my energy recklessly. So I made a list of every task that drained me, not emotionally, but physically. Lawn care. Minor repairs. Heavy grocery runs. I called a local lawn service, $80 a month. Done. I subscribed to a handyman plan. 2 visits monthly. Fixed light bulbs, leaky taps, even that stubborn back door that never closed right. And twice a week, I started ordering meal kits, not takeout, but fresh ingredients that made dinner easier without the grocery hassle. For the first time in years, my days stopped feeling like countdowns to chores. I walked through my home and saw calm where there used to be cluttered lists. I had breathing room. And that space didn't just free my schedule, it restored my joy. I had more time for reading, gardening, and spontaneous porch visits with friends. I learned that paying for help isn't indulgence, it's self-respect. We budget for bills, insurance, and holidays, but rarely for peace. Yet peace is what sustains everything else. So tell me, what's one home task you'd pay to never do again? Be honest, I know you've got one. And speaking of honesty, the next lesson took me years to accept, and it changed how I see myself completely. 7. I made peace with good enough, and my home became a sanctuary again. There was a time when I believed a good home meant spotless floors, folded towels, and the faint smell of lemon cleaner. I don't even know where that belief came from, maybe from my mother, or from the endless stream of home magazines that promised happiness if everything just looked perfect. But one night, I caught myself scrubbing the grout in my kitchen tile at 10 p.m., exhausted, knees aching, back throbbing, and I suddenly asked out loud, who am I doing this for? The silence that followed said everything. No one was coming over. No one cared if my napkins were folded or if my stovetop gleamed. The only person judging me was me. That night, I poured a glass of wine, tossed the rag in the sink, and made myself a promise. Good enough is great enough. So, I started small. I replaced the cloth napkins with beautiful patterned paper ones. Less laundry, just as lovely. I hired a cleaner once a month, just for the bathrooms, the job that always drained me the most. I started buying pre-cut vegetables and pre-cooked rice, freeing myself from the endless chopping and waiting. And instead of feeling guilty, I felt relief. Something magical happened then. My home stopped feeling like a performance and started feeling like a partnership. It no longer demanded perfection from me. It offered comfort. I began spending my mornings slowly, savoring coffee on the porch without scanning the room for what needed cleaning next. And I noticed I smiled more. I laughed more. I even started sleeping better. Making peace with good enough wasn't lowering my standards. It was raising the standard for how I treat myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't maintaining a home for guests or family or appearances. I was maintaining a home for me. And just when I thought I'd found my rhythm, I made one decision that shocked everyone, especially my kids. 8. I invited my granddaughter to live in my basement, rent-free. When I first floated the idea to my kids, they stared at me like I'd announced I was joining a rock band. "Mom," my oldest said, "you can't just let Emily move into your basement rent-free." But I wasn't looking for approval. I was looking for balance. Emily, my 24-year-old granddaughter, was working her first full-time job, trying to make rent in a city where apartments cost more than my first house. She was stressed, overworked, and one flat tire away from breaking down completely. And here I was, alone in a 3-bedroom house, with an entire finished basement that had become a glorified storage space. The solution was obvious. She needed stability, and I needed help. When she moved in, we made a pact. She'd handle the things that physically drained me, groceries, heavy lifting, the tech headaches that made me want to throw my phone across the room. In return, I'd cover utilities, dinners, and offer what money can't buy: family, warmth, and a sense of home. It's funny how quickly our rhythms synced. I wake up to the smell of her coffee brewing upstairs. She comes home late sometimes and finds me watching old movies. We end up talking about everything from her dating life to my memories of her grandfather. The house feels alive again, like it's breathing with us, not against us. But the biggest surprise: the companionship doesn't feel like dependence, It feels like renewal. I thought I'd be doing Emily a favor, but truthfully, she rescued me from the quiet. There's laughter again in the hallways, the sound of music from downstairs, and the comfort of knowing someone else is here. Our home stopped being a burden the moment we started sharing it. Aging doesn't have to mean isolation. It can mean integration. And if you have the space and the heart, maybe it's worth considering, too. But what truly set me free wasn't adding someone. It was finally letting go of something I'd been holding onto for 40 years. 9. I digitized 40 years of memories and let go of the stuff. I used to joke that my basement was like an archaeological site. You may dig through the layers of my life down there. Baby clothes, old report cards, love letters, faded photos that smelled like time itself. Every box was a time capsule, and every time I tried to clean, I ended up sitting on the floor, lost in memories instead of making progress. It wasn't the clutter holding me back, it was the weight of remembering. I was terrified that letting go of the physical things meant letting go of the people and moments they represented. But one rainy afternoon, I realized something. My memories weren't living in those boxes, they were living in me. So I made a decision that changed everything. I hired a local digitization service. $400 for a lifetime of peace. They scanned every photograph, every handwritten letter, every family video from old VHS tapes. When they handed me back a tiny drive and said, "It's all here," I felt a strange mix of relief and grief. But then I opened the files on my tablet, and there they were. My children's first days of school. My wedding day. My husband's smile. It was all still there, just lighter now. Once everything was safe digitally, I began sorting. I kept what sparked warmth, a few letters, my husband's pocket watch, the quilt my mother made. The rest, I donated, recycled, or released. For the first time, my basement echoed, not from emptiness, but from freedom. Now, when I sit with my tablet, scrolling through decades of my life, I realize I haven't lost anything. I've simply traded weight for wisdom. My memories are no longer trapped in boxes, they travel with me wherever I go. So I tell people now, smiling, my memories live in my heart and my hard drive, not in the basement. And finally, there's one last change I made, the one that pulled every lesson together and transformed the way I live inside these walls. 10. I started living like I'm worth the investment. For 60 years, I lived by invisible rules, passed down like family heirlooms. Don't use the good china except for guests. Don't sit on the decorative couch pillows. Don't light the fancy candles unless someone's visiting. My home became a stage set for other people's comfort, not my own. And I didn't even notice it happening. Somewhere between raising kids, hosting holidays, and surviving loss, I started living like a guest in my own life. The turning point came one quiet morning. I was dusting the same glass cabinet that held my wedding china, plates too beautiful to touch, preserved like memories behind glass. I thought, what exactly am I saving these for? That question hit me harder than I expected. There was no big event coming, no dinner party, no crowd to impress. Just me, standing there, waiting for permission to enjoy what I already owned. So, I set one of those plates out for breakfast. Just me, a piece of toast, and coffee in my finest teacup. It felt almost rebellious. But as silly as it sounds, something shifted. I felt present. I felt deserving. That small act unlocked something much deeper, this idea that my life didn't have to be on hold until someone else showed up. I began rearranging my space to serve my rhythm. I moved furniture so it fit the flow of how I actually live, not how a magazine layout says it should. I painted my walls the color of sunset, rich, warm, unapologetic, because that's what peace feels like to me. I started using the softest sheets every night instead of saving them for company. I stopped treating my home as a museum and started treating it as a mirror. And for the first time in years, I saw me reflected back. Not the widow. Not the host. Not the caretaker. Just Thessaly, still here, still worthy of beauty, still living. This home no longer serves my image, it serves my peace. And that, I've learned, is the truest definition of manageable. When was the last time you did something in your home just for you? Today, my house feels like mine again. Not a showpiece for guests or a storage unit for the past, but a living, breathing reflection of who I've become. 2,000 square feet once felt like a burden, a museum of shoulds, somedays, and sentimental clutter whispering stories of who I used to be. Now, those same walls feel like an embrace. Every room hums with purpose. Every corner holds ease instead of guilt. I don't avoid rooms anymore. I dance through them. Barefoot, sometimes humming to music only I can hear. The kitchen, once a battlefield of expectations, is now where I try new recipes just for fun. My living room, once overly staged, now wears comfort like a crown, soft blankets, imperfect cushions, a cup of tea always waiting nearby. Even my bedroom feels different, because it finally feels like a space I rest in, not just sleep. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It came one small, defiant decision at a time, donating what no longer served me, forgiving myself for chaos, and letting go of the belief that home had to look a certain way to be worthy. I learned to choose peace over performance, to let stillness replace striving, to find joy not in what I own, but in how I live within it. For years, I thought manageable meant smaller, tidier, or easier. But now I understand, it means aligned. It means creating a space that moves at the same rhythm as your heart. It's not about having less, it's about needing less to feel whole. The freedom I feel now isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and deeply earned. It's the sigh of relief when I walk through the door and whisper, I'm home. Manageable doesn't mean perfect, it means peaceful. And peace, I've learned, is the most beautiful kind of freedom. Tell me, when you walk through your home, does it restore you or drain you? Because how your space feels might just reveal how you do. If my story touched something in you, don't just tap like, hit that hype button. You get 3 hypes a week, and everyone helps thoughtful stories like this reach more seniors who deserve to live with confidence, joy, and calm. Let's build a community that lifts each other up, one smart choice at a time. Tell me in the comments, which of these 10 steps are you going to try first? Maybe it's digitizing memories, or maybe it's finally using your favorite dishes. And don't forget to subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors, because aging isn't slowing down, it's leveling up. And trust me, we're just getting started.